Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to this edition of SouthTalks, Art and Community Activism, discussing Jackson's public arts programs with artist Adrienne Domnick. I'm Jimmy Thomas, Associate Director for Publications at the Center for the Study of Southern Culture. We have a busy schedule of talks planned for October, and you can find that full calendar of events on the center's website. Today I'm pleased to welcome Adrienne Domnick, a Jackson-based visual artist whose work is currently on display as part of the Fertile Ground Project, which explores food access issues, including food sovereignty, nutrition, domestic hunger, and the agrarian landscape. I'd like to also mention that Adrienne has an exhibition up right now at the Hall Gallery at Millsaps College in Jackson, and that exhibition will be up through October 30th. Joining Adrienne is Amanda Malloy, a graduate of the Southern Studies Master's Program, whose thesis work focused on Memphis photographer William Eggleston. Amanda is currently the visual arts editor of the online journal Mississippi Folklife. I'd like to also take this opportunity to mention that we have recently begun an Arts in Barnard initiative, which will in part serve to invest more in our visual arts programming at the center. Amanda's heading up that initiative in that committee. So thank you, Amanda, for that. And thank you, Adrienne, for being here today. I'm really looking forward to this talk.
Thank you for having me.
I'll turn it over to y'all, the pros. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much, Jimmy, for that introduction, and thank you all for attending, and of course, thank you also, Adrienne, for putting so much time and effort into this. I really appreciate it. I have been in Santa Fe, New Mexico, working for about the past 3 years, and when I moved back to Mississippi in December, that's when I first became familiar with Adrienne's work after being sort of out of the loop in terms of Mississippi art and artists. I was immediately attracted to the bright colors and bold kind of graphic shapes in her work, but it was her subject matter and how she combines the subject matter with that style that I was just really pretty amazed by. And the more I kind of learned about her and talked about her, I'm clearly not the only one who's a fan, but for those of you unfamiliar with her work, we will be showing some of it throughout this presentation. I'm going to do a quick little introduction on my cheat sheet here and probably repeat some of what Jimmy just said, but Adrienne Domnick is a visual artist based in Jackson, Mississippi. Through her work, she aims to rediscover Black culture through the lens of contemporary art. Domnick also leverages her creative perspective to bridge the gap between community and art. Her permanent public art piece, Mamaros Kitchen, was revealed in Ferris Street Park in Jackson this past June as part of the Fertile Ground Project, which uses public art as a medium to inspire dialogue about food insecurity in Mississippi. She is also the gallery manager and curator of Ann Gallery in Jackson, an independent artist-run space for contemporary and emerging art, which seeks to facilitate creative experimentation and discussion and support emerging artists and disciplines. Adrienne, so could we just start by, could you tell us a little bit about your background, your sort of, how you became interested in art and sort of the development of your style?
Yes, I've always been interested in art. I took a different path when I was studying in college, but as soon as I got out of college, I started photography. And with photography, I learned and started studying lighting. And lighting kind of like, it kind of created my style. I really like the monochromatic elements of a black and white photograph. And I mean, like I said, I think that just really how my style came about. I draw inspiration from Black icons and pop culture. I really want my viewer to rediscover Black culture through contemporary art.
Mm-hmm. Let me put up some of your work right now. You can see it's very clear that, you know, you draw a lot of inspiration from photography, just with the shapes and the way that you use color and shadow. Here. So here we have this great piece of Fannie Lou Hamer, and I know that social justice is a big part of your work and your subject matter. Can you talk about how you use your work to engage with issues that are important to you?
Yes. I feel that the times that we're in really, you know, it chooses my subject. I want to combat inequality through my artwork as much as I can. I'm always dropping a piece when something is going on in the world. Also, in gallery that I open, we really like to focus on that type of subject matter, police reform, prison reform, as well as political issues. So that's really the path I've been taking.
Can we actually go ahead and talk a little bit about, I know we'll talk about this at the end when we talk about some of your current projects, but music is such a big inspiration for you and such a big subject matter for your work. Can you kind of talk about how that came about, how you started, you know, your interest in music and how it became a part of your art?
I just always been a hip hop kid. I love music. I really love all genres. I'm really big in studying album cover art. I'm really a big fan of that as well. So I just kind of like just throw myself into it, and whatever the music allows me to feel, you know, I want to try to portray that feeling with a different color. I realized that the dark contrast and color can really form shapes in my composition. So I just try to keep on that track.
And I know that pop art is a big inspiration for you, right?
Yes, it is. Some of my favorites are, of course, Keith Haring. I love his shapes, as well as Andy Warhol. But I find inspiration in anything. I really love going to hear live music and just see other art. It really inspires me to, you know, create what I feel.
Mm-hmm. Can you also, we'll talk more about your gallery in a minute, but I know that, again, going back to social justice, you had an exhibition that was, that we talked about, your March 4th exhibition at the gallery. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, March 4th was in 2017. We kind of did an art show around the election and just what was going on. We had a march down here on the 4th with at Nissan. It was about workers' rights and everything. So the show that we did, we invited artists from the southern region to do a protest within their art. And it got a lot of coverage. It was kind of one of the biggest things that we did to open up. Mm-hmm. You know, and it really makes me dig deeper in my own content. So I'm glad that we did it.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the Fertile Ground Project. For those who aren't familiar, I know Jimmy and I have both discussed it briefly, but again, it uses public art as a medium to inspire dialogue about food insecurity in Mississippi. Adrienne has 2 pieces included in the project, Mamaros Kitchen and Sunday at 6. Adrienne, can you tell us about your experience with the Fertile Ground Project and kind of your role in it and how it came together?
Yeah, it's been pretty great working with them. Salam, Rita, and Travis Crabtree is the city organizers that organized the grant. And they asked me to be an artist on the grant. And once we received the Bloomberg grant, we started the project. The project is about food access and insecurity in the South. And my role was just an artist. And I also hosted another artist in my gallery as well.
Yeah, which we will talk about in just a minute. But first, let's look at your pieces that were included in the project. And let me get those up. So this is Mamaros Kitchen. Can you tell us a little bit about this piece?
Yeah, Mamaros Kitchen explores memory, identity, food, and family. I recreated old photos of me and my family centered around food. My main goal with this piece was to, keep my grandmother's legacy going. She was an urban farmer. She fished and sold fish and shared crops throughout the neighborhood. And I really wanted to just to recreate that feeling about what food meant to me. And back in that time, everything was fresh. And also this space that it's at Fair Street. And I grew up in that area. And my grandma had a cafe down there as well. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like full circle.
Mm-hmm. And you have another piece included in the project, Sunday at 6. Can you talk about that?
Yes. Sunday at 6 is just something that my grandma used to ask us to do. She wanted everybody in the family to come and, talk about our day, sit around and talk about everything that's going on with the family, before social media and cell phones were a thing. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted people to just think back on that memory. I know I'm not the only one that have that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think both of those, it seems like there's not a lot of your work addresses, culture and social issues and historic Black figures, and these are very personal pieces. And I really like how it's addressing food insecurity in a really unique way, and sort of understanding how to, use food as also a tool for engagement with each other, and kind of a place to come together. And yeah, it seems like these pieces are very personal to you.
Yeah, very. I think this project really made me dig deeper into my own family history. I reached out to everybody to find archives, just to find photos of us eating and, celebrating. So it was a really cool project to work on and tell my grandmother's story.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as you sort of mentioned earlier, Adrienne is the gallery manager and curator and gallery in Jackson. Adrienne, you had a pretty significant exhibition there recently that was also part of the Fertile Ground project. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, one of the principal artists on the project was Kara Walker. We had our piece titled Figa, which is a piece of an original piece that was shown at the Domino Factory. She had a piece called A Subtlety that she opened up. The piece was a picture of a lady with African-American features in the shape of a sphinx. It was really about, most of her work is about race, oppression, labor, sexuality. And I'm just glad that we were able to host it in my space. They wanted it to be shown in the same type of environment it was originally, like a warehouse type of feel. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we had the piece up for a month in September. It was like booking only. And everybody came out. I think it was a good turnout.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of sort of social and cultural implications in the piece too, that are important. Do you think that people in Jackson kind of understood the meaning behind it? It's sugar, which obviously, has sort of a complicated history. And then, once you see the larger piece, it all kind of makes sense. But you said there was a video that you also showed in the exhibition? Yeah,
we showed the original reactions of everyone when it first opened up in 2014. And people were just shook by it. It's not all sugar. It's made of a polystyrene, which is like a premium grade of styrofoam. It's real heavy, and it's just coated in sugar. I think that if they didn't understand what it was about, they really knew once they left.
Mm-hmm.
it's like taking this big black figure and coating it white. It's very powerful.
Yeah. When you see the piece as a whole, and I encourage, I don't have an image of it, and I apologize, but I encourage everyone to go take a look. It's very powerful, and I think you all did a great job of sort of, even though this is just, and what happened to the rest of the sculpture? It was destroyed, right?
Yeah, they destroyed it like 3 months after it showed in that space. That space had got renovated to something else. Kara said that she broke her only rule by keeping this piece. She wasn't supposed to. So the company that represents her, Takima Jenkins, they own it now. And it was just in storage. It's not traveling or anything. We brought it out specifically for this project.
Do you know why she decided to keep this piece in particular?
I don't know. I think that she was just moved by it, you know, just the meaning of it. Like the Figa means so many things across different cultures. It can mean genitalia. It can mean fuck you. It can mean all kind of slurs or symbols of power.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit more about your gallery. Can you tell us how it began and what you hope to accomplish with it?
Yeah, and gallery kind of started with just not seeing experimental art in Jackson. I co-run the space with Tyler Tadlock. He's another artist. We both travel outside of the city to see art, and we were just like, we need to create a space that people can show art that's not for sale, something that's huge, that's, you know, of scale. And that's how it started. We created it in 2016. And the Kara Walker piece is the biggest exhibition we've had thus far. And like I said, it's artist run, and we just want to show emergent art.
Can you tell us about some of the exhibitions that you've had there?
Yes, we have about 2 to 3 shows a year. Because like I said, we are both working artists, so we just try to do it in between time. We have shows experimenting art. We also have experimental performances that's curated around the art. We also have Black History Month film series every February. Yeah, we just try to, you know, show artists of all colors really pushing forward with art that really have something to say.
Yeah, and what I like about the gallery is that you seem to put a lot of emphasis on incorporating many different styles of art and mediums, not just visual art, but music, performances, dance. Why was that decision made, and how do you think that those different styles of art kind of work together in your space?
It just gives artists a blank canvas. You know, we like our artists to, you know, look at the space and create around that space if you can. Like, what can you come up with this space? What can you do? And I think that that's very important. A lot of museums don't allow that. Or if you want people to be interactive with your art, you know, you can touch it here. You know, if the artist wants you to do that, you can do that. We just feel like that's very necessary, especially something in Jackson. You know, we were really trying to fill a void with doing so.
Can you tell us some of the subject matter of the exhibitions that you've shown, or some of the, you know, main subjects in the work that you show?
Yeah, our subjects range from pieces about identity, religion, equality, just rights for all people. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
How do you think, I mean, art is clearly such a powerful and valuable tool for addressing issues like social justice. Why do you think that is, and how do you think that subject works so strongly with visual arts?
I just think any artist, you know, one of my favorite artists, Nina Simone, always said that as an artist, you have to reflect the times. And I think that, you know, that's the most powerful tool you have. Like, that's your platform to protest or say something if you want to, without opening your mouth. I really like that idea.
Mm-hmm. You're obviously such a strong figure in the Jackson community, not just with your work, but with the work that you do. And, you know, you participate in the community so much. What does it mean to you to be such a strong advocate in the community? And did you always kind of feel that way about Jackson?
Actually, I didn't. Once I graduated from college, I graduated from Southern Miss. I moved to Washington, D.C., you know, just to be around more culture, just open-minded people. You know, the South can just, you know, we have a representation of being closed-minded. But when I moved back home, you know, I started appreciating it more. I moved down here in Midtown and got a studio and just got involved with the community. And I realized that the community loves art as well. You know, so I just been trying to bridge that gap between community and art with all of the stuff that I'm a part of, all of the organizations. You know, I think that that's my calling in a way.
Yeah, I think sometimes you kind of have to leave the thing that you love before you can really appreciate it. Do you think that when you were in Washington, did it come to you then that maybe you had more work to do in Mississippi, or was it, you know, you kind of had to reluctantly come back and then it kind of, you became more involved?
Kind of both. I mean, you know, I realized that there's no support like the support from home. You know, I think it was smart to build a foundation here before I try to go somewhere else and hopefully build it there. You know, so I just decided to allow Jackson to nurture me and nurture Jackson at the same time.
And you're also a member of the
Business Association of Midtown.
Yeah.
And it's an organization that you know, throw community events through art, and also just work hand in hand with the community, you know, building it up, you know, for the kids around here.
I know that Mississippi can be sort of a difficult place to kind of address certain topics. You know, it does, as you said, have sort of a reputation of being more conservative, which, you know, is a lot of the times an accurate reputation. But I'm wondering, you know, your gallery and your work both seem pretty fearless in what's important to you, and I'm wondering, like, how the response from the community has been, if there's been any pushback, and how you've dealt with that.
As far as the community, it's been great. I mean, even when we get pushback, it's just an opportunity to educate. You know, everyone has their idea of what art is. You know, it's very subjective to the person that's looking at it. So I think that, you know, even if you're not a fan, you'll come in and you will have respect for what we do. And I think that, you know, that I appreciate that. It keeps me, you know, it makes me want to keep going.
Mm-hmm. You said that as with the business association, sometimes you do like gallery tours and during the holidays, and some people would kind of come in and kind of not really understand what y'all were doing, and, you know, that gave you an opportunity, really.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love, you know, nothing is a dumb question. I love, you know, you come into the gallery and you see a piano broken on the floor and you're like, what kind of art is this? You know, you never know what that artist meant, you know, and it's just a time to educate people that art can be more than a painting on the wall, you know.
With all of this work that you're doing, and with the Fertile Ground Project and with your gallery, do you see change happening? Do you feel hopeful?
I do. I mean, it's a big difference from when I started. I see a whole community of art kids, like all the schools, like, you know, I go to a lot of shows. It's just a lot of good energy right now. You know, I want us to be able to keep it going during COVID, but it's changed a lot. Like the creative economy in Midtown has really grown in the last 10 years. and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Well, and I think that's why the Fertile Ground Project is so important, especially during these times when, you know, we can't really walk into a space and just sort of casually look. I think that their initiative to, you know, public art is so important, and I think that they're using it in a really creative way that I think Jackson really needs. And I think, you know, what y'all are doing is so important because, you know, in a place like Jackson, sometimes it can be hard for younger people to understand the opportunities that they have. And if someone is interested in art and, you know, art that might kind of shake things up and that are seeking, that's, you know, seeking to change things, that's really important.
Yeah, I really think so. I think, you know, as human beings, like, and as kids, we need to see ourselves. You know, it feels good to see a representation of yourself or someone doing something that you want to do, you know, and I think that the people in this city, you know, I think that they are ready for a change. So I think that this is why it's, you know, art is so great right now here. I'm really proud of it.
What gave you the courage to kind of step out and decide that, you know, you were going to do this and make it happen?
I just like challenges too. Like, I'm a competitive person, you know, I study sports, I play sports, so I'm very competitive when it comes to that. And I'm just in competition with myself, you know, like trying to get better and better as the years go, just keep learning all I can. You know, I'm a student of this thing. And I think that that's what Ann Gallery is, you know, it's like art school in a way, because I'm learning so much. And, you know, when I didn't have, you know, at one point in time, I felt like I wasn't getting the type of opportunities that I wanted to see. So, you know, Anne kind of allowed me to, like, I do it myself. let me feel my own space and let me show you what I could do, you know. And I think that people are finally starting to see that, you know, that I'm serious about what I do. So.
And kind of jumping back to the Fertile Ground Project, can you tell us a little bit more? You know, I think it's really important for people like you who are kind of working from the community out. Can you tell us how the Fertile Ground Project kind of started? Because that's sort of an example of someone outside of the community kind of giving the community the opportunities with the Bloomberg grant and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it took, you know, it took a lot of preparation to come up with something, just an idea, you know, and I thought that was smart for them to realize the nutrition value in Mississippi and talk about it. And I feel like, you know, a lot of the city did have some pushback, like wondering how could art help food, you know, like why can't you just give people food? But that wasn't what the grant was about. You know, I think that the whole project is just to get the conversation started, to talk about how you can grow your own crops, just to talk about how to, you know, live and eat sustainably. I think that what we were missing is the education, the lack of education, not knowing where to go and get healthy food options. And a lot of these neighborhoods around here don't have healthy food options. They only have fast food, gas station food every corner, you know. And I'm luckily enough to grow up with a grandmother who didn't believe in that food. You know, we always ate fruit for snacks and stuff like that, you know. And I just want to see that. I want to see that come back around, you know, for the younger generation. And I think that the Fertile Ground Project is really showing that in so many different aspects. Like, they even had planned, like, for pop-up food spots and stuff like that. You know, and they're still trying to get some stuff off the ground. It was supposed to be a whole expo around the Fertile Ground Project. But I think that they're doing a great job at, you know, facilitating a grant of this magnitude. And it gives the city hope to, you know, we can get more stuff like this. You know, a lot of cities run off grants and art money like this. So I think that it's great that, you know, everybody here has an opportunity to you know, to show their craft.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, obviously the expo couldn't happen this year. It was supposed to happen in April, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was supposed to happen in April. Obviously that couldn't happen. Can you what were the plans for that? What was going to take place?
You know, they were going to have a big showing for the documentary, like a movie style showing for that. There was going to be a farm to table dinner, like a real big dinner that, you know, they had tickets for. Um, a lot of public art installations around town. And like I said, they're still putting some up right now. And food pop-up spaces. And I think all of that stuff is still happening. It's just slowly and trying to figure out how to do it around COVID.
Yeah, and for those of you who, again, aren't familiar with Fertile Ground, I would encourage you to look at their website, which I think we have in the comments. There's a great short documentary on what they're doing, and it's really shows the significance of how important this work is. So, can we talk a little bit more about how music influences your work, and in relation to that, the kind of current projects that you're working on?
Yes, my current project is at Millsaps. It's running. It opened Monday and it'll close on October the 30th. And it's called Dear Jazz, and it's like paying homage to the jazz musicians that paved the way through the industry. Like I told you before, I'm a hip hop kid, and hip hop introduced me to jazz back in '96, I think, with a Tribe Called Quest. I really got hooked on this producer named Jay Dilla, and he always, you know, snuck some jazz in there. And that's what made me go and look up the greats like Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Billie Holiday, my favorite Nina Simone. You know, all those artists created music about the times, you know, and I thought it was just great to, you know, reach back to them, because that's what I'm trying to do with my art as well.
Can you tell us a little bit about the pieces in this exhibition and some of the musicians that you kind of pay homage to?
Yeah, like I said, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Billie Holiday, Eric Dolphy. I even paid homage to Gil Scott-Heron, which is like a poet, jazz poet as well. You know, I'm calling it a love story, you know, just to talk about my love of music and just my path of understanding and of sounds. You know, I just really appreciate sounds and music.
I'd like to say that if anyone has any questions for Adrienne, this is a good time to ask them as we sort of wrap up our discussion. And we just got one, actually. Adrienne, can you talk about the role of art in our current politically charged moment? For example, the Black Lives Matter paintings in the street?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So the question is basically, can you talk about the significance of art in our current political climate, which obviously is, you know, very important, and, you know, with Black Lives Matter and things like that, what role do you think art plays given our current political times?
I think art plays a big role. Like, again, I think that you could really protest through art. You could really, you know, get out what you're trying to say. And as artists, I think that it's really our duty to do so. You know, you have to know what's going on outside. You cannot be blind to it. You cannot be silent right now. So I think what better way as an artist than to express yourself through art. I love seeing all those Black Lives Matter streets that are painted. Just people reaching out to Black artists to represent them. Like, it's a great cause right now.
We have another question, and this is going back to the role that music plays in your work. Can you talk about hearing sounds, and you in interviews that you've done before, you really talk about the connection between visual and music, and how those really kind of are very interconnected for you.
Yes. So when I pick a subject, I normally just do a deep dive, you know, just even about stuff that I don't know. watch documentaries, read books, just try to get a feel of that person. And, different songs, different albums make me feel different things, I really feel like I hear colors when certain artists play or sing, and that's how I come up with everything, and also using my monochromatic elements to create like this gradient feel. Music just it's just a big reason for what I'm doing. I just always love music. I've always been into magazines that talk about music and just what different artists go through and why they make music is very important to me. So I just want to like pay homage to those people always.
Mm-hmm. We have an interesting question here in the comments. So a lot of, because I think you draw from photographs so much, a lot of your work has very distinct facial features, and, you can really kind of experience the emotion in them. And I'd like to also just briefly encourage everyone to visit Adrienne's website and Instagram to see more examples of this. But what was the choice to leave out facial features in your pieces that you included in the Fertile Ground project?
That was a new approach for me. I've done it, but I've never really showed anybody. So I really wanted to come out with a different style, what I'm into right now, but also keep some of the same elements people remember me by. I went full force with the colors, and, I left them faceless because I really wanted everyone to see themselves in it. I wanted you to feel like that's me and my grandmother, that's me and my auntie. I wanted you to imagine it being you or somebody else. I didn't want it to be a specific person.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your grandmother and what it was like kind of growing up in that atmosphere?
Yeah, she's from this area, and she was just a businesswoman. She fished every day, she sold fish, and she ran a cafe. She did so many things like throughout my life. I thought that kind of stuff was normal until I got older and I realized, oh, she was a hero in the community. Everybody, respected her and looked for her for help. And, I just don't want that to die. I don't think a lot of people know what my grandma did around here. And I just wanted to keep her legacy alive by telling her story, because she really held not only the family together, but the community together.
Where was her cafe and when was it open?
1970, maybe 4 or 5 years in the 70s. Over here, actually behind my studio. It's in a building beside the old Lucky Town. I don't know if you consider familiar with the Lucky Town Brewery. It's closed now, but it's behind it. I don't even think the building is still there, but I just only have photos. I wasn't alive during that time.
Okay. So, it sounds like in a lot of ways, what your grandmother did with food is kind of what you're trying to do with art.
Yeah, I want to feed the community my art, I think so in a way. Yeah.
That's great. We have another question from the audience. Adrienne, could you talk about street art and mural projects in Jackson?
I really didn't see many opportunities of doing street art before this project. I don't think that everyone in Jackson view murals as a good thing. I think a lot of the businesses think, oh, it's graffiti or something like that. And it's really not, I think that people are just now starting to get open to the idea. And a little second part of the Fertile Ground project allowed people to do, I think they put up 4 murals around town. And they allow people to submit and put something up that has something to do with Fertile Ground. And once they did that, so many businesses reached out like, oh, we'll take one on our building. We'll take one on our building. It was like, this is cool that people are starting to open up about that. Like, you don't have to hire a signed company. You could hire some artists to do something. that really matches what your brand identity is. And I think that that's cool. I don't know of any opportunities right now, but I could say just check with the Mississippi Arts Commission or Greater Jackson Arts Council. Those are organizations that will give an artist a stipend to do such thing.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, the Fertile Ground Project is great in a lot of ways. Obviously, what it's doing to bring awareness to food insecurity, but also that it seems to have sort of redirected how people view public art, and kind of seeing it as something to support, not kind of just, for lack of a better word, I think a lot of people think of graffiti and just, vandalism, but really it's, it sounds like they're doing a lot to change the perspective of public art and murals.
I think so. I really do. I think people are getting more open-minded about it. And that's all it takes. I want to bring that back to education. The same thing I have to do with my gallery. People just need to be educated. Just because you're not familiar with something, you got to be willing to learn what it's about, and not shut out this group of artists or these group of people, trying to, better their craft and get themselves out there.
Mm-hmm. Was this your first time working on such a large scale? It seems like a lot of your work is more like you can see some of Adrienne's pieces behind her to kind of get an idea of the scale of your work.
This was the biggest piece I did. I also did 2 murals for the Jackson airport. And they were about like 4x8 panels. That was really big, like 4x8 feet. So that was big, but this was the biggest thing I've done. And I had a little bit of time to work on it and get my ideas together. And I'm really, excited about how it turned out.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't go to art school, right?
No, ma'am.
So how did you, you're so talented and your work is so, technically, incredible. How did you, was it just practice? Did you just teach yourself or?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. Also, I've always been a creative. I wanted to go to school for art, but my mom said that it didn't make money. Like it wasn't even a thing in my house. So I always drew and put posters around my wall of my own artwork. And my mom thought it was cool, but she didn't think that was the way to go. And at the time I was obeying my parent, I would say that. But as soon as I graduated and gave her that degree, I started practicing and really just, throwing myself into the craft of photography. And once I picked up acrylic, I just used those same principles. So yeah, I studied sports and I also studied sports. I got my master's in sports management, and I really used like my management skills to manage my art. Just to be honest, like it taught me how to market myself, how to just how to do things professionally. That has helped. Like, so I try to use some of the things I learned in my artwork as well.
Mm-hmm. So has your mom come around?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. She's like, oh, why didn't you do that? And I'm like, I don't even want to hear it, because when I tried to do this thing, for her, it's like just to know that I'm able to, do for myself and take care of myself and do things that I want to do. She really has a lot more respect for it, and to see that people actually support it, she's starting to come around.
Well, that's great. And for those of you who would like to support Adrienne, again, I encourage you to take a look at her Instagram, her website. She also has a wonderful Etsy store with some really incredible prints and stickers and pins. So yeah, y'all should check that out. And I want to thank everyone for attending, and I would like to thank you, Adrienne. This has been great.
Oh, thank you. This has been very good. I don't talk a lot, so this lets me get it out and explain what I do. And I think people will appreciate hearing me talk about it.
Good. Yeah, I think so. And I think we're all a little rusty at talking right now in quarantine. So, yeah. But all right. Well, thank you. And yeah. Check out Adrienne's work.
Thank you.